out, everyone can take and pass. And I just want to give you a little bit of background. Last year we did this, and I gave you kind of the full, historical overview. This year I'll just give you a little bit of the history, and I want to learn particularly a piece I think that is appropriate for the occasion. So basically, right, as you see, right, this is like a WhatsApp. It's like a thing, a post that's gone around all of my family chats and all sorts of, spaces, right? Today's the Yahrzeit, 22nd of Shvat, Rav Nachman and the Morgenstern, Kotzker Rebbe, okay, so he lived in 1787, he dies in 1859. His Rebbe was the Chose of Lublin. Lublin is, is that big town. That's where the famous Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin was. Still, the building still stands. It's like down the block from Majdanek, okay? And basically, what the Kotzker Rebbe did was, just again, Bekitzer, as we've spoken about this before, what he did was he reoriented the Chassidic movement. Chassidic movement started as a movement of people who wanted to find a connection to Hashem that wasn't only based on whether they could learn up a Tosfos or not, right? Because that was really your connection to Judaism. Okay, your connection to Judaism was based on whether you could read, whether you could become a Talmid Chacham, right? You go to yeshiva or whatever, right? But how you needed access to a malamed, to a teacher, right? They didn't have Westchester Day School or SAR. They didn't have a day school system, back then, right? So you hired a malamed. They didn't even have, like, a cheder was like a smaller part, right? You had to hire someone. And in order to hire someone, what do you need? You need money. And most people were poor, right? And most people were illiterate for that reason. And there was like a feeling where Judaism was really getting lost amongst the masses, right? It was in the aristocracy, in the intelligentsia, and everyone else who's living along the Russian and Polish countryside is lost. They have no connection to Yahadus. And came the Baal Shem Tov, and he's like, yeah, no, like, you can connect to God. You don't need to learn up a Tosfos to connect to God. You should. It's nice. Learning is great. Gemara is fantastic. But there are other aspects to Torah, right? They started opening up a world of Kabbalah and Kabbalistic ideas, and that was also controversial because, 100 years earlier, Shabtai Tzvi had done that, and kind of led to a lot of ruin within Europe and a lot of despondency. And basically, Baal Shem says, look, we could sing, we could sit at a table, we could fabrang, we could have a tish, right? And we could elevate the food, we could make brachas, we could connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through, there are other means, right? We could daven, right? We could just be joyful, we could connect one to another, right? Just to be a good person. To have Avos Yisrael is enough, right? To connect, right, to God, right? Because if I connect to my fellow Jews, I'm connected to God. Well, he basically took all of the principles that already exist in the Torah and kind of amplified them in a way that they weren't amplified before. Because again, back then it was just Limud Torah and that's it. And then what ended up happening was, right, it catches on like wildfire, right? Oh, wow, I can connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this sad and dreary world, of Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe in the 1700s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. Like, wow, I'm in. This is great. And there was a certain fire that started to burn, a certain varmkeit, a warmth, right? A joy in their Judaism that they really didn't have before. And what ended up happening was, a few generations later, and this I'm skipping down to the Choseh, it started becoming something that it wasn't supposed to be, which was, it kind of just became like Rebbe worship, right? It was the Choseh. Choseh was called the Choseh of Lublin. Why? Choseh means to see. Why was it called the seer of Lublin? Because he was blind. Right? So like, oh wow, he could see, and Ruach HaKodesh, and he probably did, and then he could do miracles. Who knows? Maybe he did. I don't know. But what ended up happening was the people just started coming to like hang with the Rebbe, because the Rebbe became this like very central, charismatic figure, to the community, and they kind of just, they hung out, and there was a Hasidic court, Who has a court? Where do you hear about a court? Not judges and lawyers. Who had a court in those days in the 1700s, 1600s? Who has a court? The king has a court. And what'd you do in the king's court? You sat around. You watched the king and you saw what he did and right? And so into that realm comes the Kotzker Rebbe, along with some others, Rav Simcha ben Shishcha, the Yid HaKadosh, and they're looking at what's going on, and they're like, what is this? What do you mean? What do you mean? The Rebbe, what? Guys, we got to daven. No, the Rebbe, it's cool. The Rebbe's davening for me. I need to make a living. The Rebbe's going to give me a bracha. I'm going to make a living. I need to, marry off my kid. The Rebbe's going to give me a bracha. And the Kotzker's like, this chevra, Simcha ben Shishcha, and the Yiddish are like, yeah, that's not the way it works. Who's supposed to help us? It's not the Rebbe. The Rosh Shalom's supposed to help. The Rebbe helps us. The Rebbe inspires us. The Rebbe helps us connect. The Rebbe teaches us. But you're losing the fundamentals, right? You have like the beef jerky of Judaism, but you're missing the cholent, and you're missing the cocoa. Like you're missing the point here, right? There needs to be more, and that's what the Kotzker did. Following in the footsteps of this chevra, and they kind of broke away. Not in a bad way. There was a little controversy when they broke away, but they kind of just like rebooted Chassidut. I like to call it like the punk rock, kind of movement in Chassidus, which is like, it's not about what you wear. It's not about your strimal. It's not about your bekisha. It's like if you walked into Kotzker and you're wearing a strimal, they knocked it off your head. And so what are you doing? Well, I'm a chassid. Really, you're a chassid? You know what a chassid means? Yeah, it means I'm a guy that wears a strimal and a bekisha, and I have payas and a beard. And he goes, that's not what a chassid means. What's a chassid mean? It means someone who's pious. Are you pious? Are you very devout? Prove it, right? So that was the idea. It was a return to the roots of the importance of Judaism, really, and bringing everything else in, right? Yes, tefillah is important. Yes, chesed is important. Yes, Ahavas Yisrael is important. Yes, emunah is important. Yes, simcha is important. But guess what? So is learning Gemara, right? And so is learning the Maharal and understanding fundamentals of Jewish life. And so is like go out and get a job, right? And instead of asking the Rebbe, to get you money, go out and get a job and make money for yourself, right? And doing for yourself, right? And being honest. It's about being authentic, okay? And that's where we pick it up from, okay? So what we're going to do today, this evening, is we're going to learn a piece from the Shemi Shmuel, who is a grandson of the. So the Kotzker Rebbe is someone asked me. So he's my great grandfather. Okay, Kotzker Rebbe. That's there. So I have a lot of cousins around. People are randomly. Oh, there's a Morgenstern here, a Morgenstern there, and they check. Okay, what line do we come? There happens to be a guy named Jonathan Morgenstern. Some of you might know this. Do you know this? Jonathan Morgenstern. He lives down the block. He lives in Larchmont. And somehow we connected. He's about 10 years older than me, and we're cousins on the same line. We share the same great grandfather, Pillar Rebbe, right? And then it breaks. It's wild. I've invited him. He's more like whatever. He's not Orthodox, and he's come to actually my two grandsons' brisses. I always invite him to shul, come Chanukah, Yom Kippur. And we're in touch. I spoke to his father. His father passed away a few years ago. Unbelievable, right? Like, what are the chances of that, right? So the Kotzker Rebbe, he had a son, Rav David Morgenstern, Rav David Mikotsk. His son was the Pillar Rebbe, Rav Chaim Yisrael Morgenstern. His son was the Sokolov Rebbe, Yitzchak Zelig Morgenstern. His son was the Vangrava Rebbe. My great grandfather was stabbed on Yom Kippur in 1939. Died a few days later. Then there's my Zaidi, Rabbi Abraham Morgenstern, then my dad, and then me. Right. So that's kind of where we are. But you understand what the Kotzker said about Yichus. He said Yichus is like a lot of zeros. So you could have a lot of zeros, and if you put a zero in front of all of the zeros, what does it actually equal? Zero. Nothing. It means nothing. Yichus. It's like, okay, what are you? If you put a 1 or a 2 or a 3, if you put a real number in front of those zeros, then it means something, right? But So halavai, I should be zeicha to not be a zero. So here we go. So I wrote Le'ilu Nishmos. I was about to write the Bibas family, and then I saw this horrible, the latest round of psychological torture that we don't know. We don't even know what's the deal with Shira. So it's Kulam Shener Guba'aza Hashem Yikom Damam. We're learning to the elevation of the soul of all those who were killed in Aza, and may God avenge their blood. Amen. Okay. The Shemi Shmuel, Rav Shmuel Bornstein. This is another story, right? My daughter-in-law, her maiden name is Borenstein. According to family lore, they come from the Borenstein family, who was the Avnei Nezer, who was the son-in-law of the Kotzker Rebbe, right? And so we reconnected. We like to think that we reconnected the Morgenstern and Bornstein families once again, and Simon and Lauren, Baruch Hashem, now in Aryeh and Israel, thank God. So he's the grandson from the Borenstein side. Okay, so he's my great uncle. And actually, Ora learned up a beautiful piece from the Shemi Shmuel this past Shalosh Shudas. So here's what he says. So we're on the bottom right. There's a bracket. And I think it's a very Kotzker idea. He quotes his father all the time, and very often his father is quoting his grandfather, the Kotzker. So here it says line 1. Ach kamo b'Mitzrayim osam shelo ratzu latzeis mesu b'shloshis yemei afela. He says that in Egypt, we know that there were people who didn't want to leave Egypt. Those people didn't want to leave Egypt. Those were during the days of darkness, days of Choshech. They ended up dying in Egypt during those 3 days of darkness. V'lo imtin lahem ad Nisan shesigu chaim chadashim. And they couldn't wait until Nisan, right? It's interesting to think about, right? Makah Choshech is probably around this time of year, right? If it was Choshech and Bechoros, right? So it's probably, mid-Adar, I guess, early to mid-Adar. They say each plague on some level lasted 3 weeks. So it's probably, right, let's say mid-Adar or something, okay? And they couldn't wait. If they would have waited till Nisan, what would have happened? Gula, redemption. And they would have had a new life. They couldn't wait. Muchrach lomar shlo haisa lahem toelas. And it seems like we have to say that they had no reason to live. There was no benefit for them to move forward. Ki chaim chadashim elem mo'ilim rak l'rotzim latzeit mitumatam. Because chaim chadashim, a new life, a new lease on life, only applies to people who actually want a new lease on life. They want to get better, right? They want to, free themselves from their impurities, right? You have to want it. Okay? El she'in bahem koach. They have no strength. Ki ha'even gdola al pia be'er. It's beautiful, imagery, because they have just the rock, the stone is too big. That's on top of the be'er, on top of the well, and they just don't have the kayach to lift it. What is this the imagery to? What story in the Torah? Yaakov, right? Yaakov sees, they were by the be'er, this is where he met Rachel, right? And no one could lift the stone, and Yaakov's able to lift the stone. And the idea is the be'er is like the wellspring, right? Wellspring of life, wellspring of life force, of energy, and they just can't do it. אבל למי שאינו רוצה לצאת מתינופי דהי עלמא, אין החיים החדשים מועילים כלום, וממילא אין לכבוד לזכות על העתיד. Again, he can't see a future for himself, right? Because he can't see any other life. Here's my pop culture reference. Jordana, someone asked me, we were at the table on Shabbos, and someone asked me, someone had asked me, one of my students says, what's my favorite movie? So of course the answer number one is Spaceballs. Like that's, hands down Spaceballs. But favorite serious movie? Shawshank. Okay? Shawshank Redemption. You have to see Shawshank. It's fantastic. And Jordana's like, it's too long. I never had the patience to sit through it. So Ella and I forced her to watch Shawshank. I think she liked it. But what do they talk about? right? When the old man gets out, right? He had been in prison for 50 years, and he gets out. He's bagging groceries, and he's like, I couldn't do it. He wanted. What did he do? He wanted to. Literally was dreaming about how he could maybe steal a car, right, to get back in, right? And Morgan Freeman says he's an institution man. He was institutionalized. He's an institution man. He can't think of life outside of these walls, right? And that's like the big fear, right? That Freeman has it also, and so on, right? And the idea of like Andy Dufresne's like, no. His whole life was picturing outside the walls, right? That's the great scene when he finally gets out and he tunnels out and then he rips off his clothing, right? And he in the rain and right? And he's experiencing, he's feeling it, right? What it's saying is that there were people in Egypt, Nebuch, that couldn't. They were institutionalized. They couldn't picture life outside of Egypt, and we know that's true because there were also people that left Egypt, and even once they left Egypt, what happened? We want to go back. It's too much. It's too hard. It's easier. They gave me all my food. They call the shots. You know what? It's easier that way. I just want to be there. Okay. Now look at line 10. Why are we talking about this? Parshas Mishpatim. Ukemo she'inyan be'eved ivri. This is the inyan of the Eved Ivri, the Hebrew servant. Even though he's gone down to such great depths, right, that he stole, and he has now a master upon himself. And he just gave up on his feeling of having just a regular Jewish life. Mikol makom, shvius motziaso. But we know, right, in 7th year he goes free. Ukamoshe Higid, Avi, Admor, Zechat Tzaddik, the bracha. He's talking about his father, the Avnei Nezer, Rav Avraham Borenstein. This is Rav Shmuel Borenstein. Shekol Shviu and Akuda Primi Shabbosok Sheshak Tzavot, Vishivu Reino Shaykh and Kitzonios, Ubisora and Akuda Primis Yotze L'Chavshi. But he's saying sort of Kabbalistic idea that 6 and then 7 is about freedom and so on. Umikol Makom, just look at line 17. Ima Mario Mara Eved Ahaftias Adonias Ishtivas Banailo Itzei Chavshi. So we know that the Eved, the servant, after 6 years, that's not really who he is, right? And really he wants to go free. Oh yeah, sort of externally he has the accoutrements of being a servant to someone other than God, but that's not really who he is. That's not his essence. Now in the 7th, right, his Shabbos, I'm out. All right, I'm going to be free. But if the servant says, no, I'm happy here. I like these 4 walls. I'm happy. I'm an institution man. So he doesn't go free. That's what happened in Mitzrayim. Shemachma shahayu lahem pitronim in Mitzrayim. Haita ahuva lahem sraratam. The Egyptians had all the answers. They had the food. They had the shelter. They provided everything. They appreciated it. They couldn't imagine a new life, right? Like a new awakening, a new inspiration. And therefore they died in the darkness. They couldn't see a way forward. They died in the darkness. And I can't help but think, as we're talking, about this, about the hostages. How incredible are these people? How incredible are they? The only reason, right, anyone who came out, even Oded Lifshitz, 83 years old, I have no doubt, we know he was brutally murdered. He would have survived. We saw, right, Keith Siegel, we saw, who's the older man?
Moses.
What? Moses, right. Unbelievable. He was in like a tiny cell, he made sure to walk, X amount of steps each day, kept the diary, right? They just wanted to start. They're ready to start their new life. And you heard actually this language from certain people who got out. And they just they don't want to look back. They just want to start their new life. They're just ready. They're excited to start their new life. People that don't have that feeling, right? I could imagine that any of us, chas v'shalom, if we're in that situation, would we have lasted? Who knows? Well, you get subsumed in the darkness. The resilience, the strength, this desire for that Chaim Chadashim, it's inspiring. It's incredible. The girl was, what's her name? Agan Berger, I think it was, with the sitter, who was arguing with the captor about the sitter. They're arguing about religion, first of all, right? They're arguing. The guy's a gun. They're arguing about he's saying, keep the Quran and so on and so forth. And she's saying, nah, it's that's not real. I want to die. And imagine that, the respect that she earned from this guy. He finds a sitter from a soldier who happened to just have been in the area, and so here is your lucky day. Here you go.
You said I'm glad you believe in God. Like, as long as you believe in God,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And she kept that sitter with her. It's story. You hear stories like this. They're Holocaust stories, right? The people who hid a pair of tefillin with them, right? My grandfather. I remember seeing the Spielberg thing from him. I never knew this. He talked about how they put together a Rosh Hashanah minyan in Auschwitz. He was in a sub camp in Auschwitz. It was like a coal mining sub camp. He said, yeah, we had put a few guys together. He said it very nonchalant. That was my Zayda, like, yeah, whatever. How was the food in Auschwitz? He writes. He said it. He goes, yeah, not bad. That's what he said. He goes, really? The interviewer. That's how he looked at life, right? And he said, yeah, it was Rosh Hashanah. We put together a minyan. We davened. There was someone who was a chazan. You remember? Right? That's what it is. It's looking ahead. It's not getting bogged down in the present and even in the past. The past could sometimes bog us down, right? It's actually looking ahead, looking forward, looking that there's a future out there. That's why everyone's so devastated today, because it was I heard on the what's the name? Monty Friedman was interviewed by Senor on the Dan Senor. They called me back and they were talking like, why are people so devastated today? Like people knew. We still, by the way, we still don't know what's with Shiri, right? Who knows, right? Who knows? Maybe she's alive. But everyone knew, because even in the upper echelons in the government, they knew what happened to the kids. They knew, right? But for some reason, people just held on to it, and because they're like a symbol of life. It's a mother and two young children, right? We could all we see ourselves, we see our children, our grandchildren in these kids, and it's like a symbol of life, and we couldn't let go of it until Nebuchadnezzar comes crashing down. But there's a beauty to that, to be able to do that. He says, "V'cheina inyan be'aras Nisan," line 4 in the second column, "Shenitnim chaim chadashim, hem eina mo'ilim elo l'rotz latzeit mitinufat ha'alma." If you want Nisan to work, if you want Nisan to free you from, all of the things, the stuff that bogs you down, your anxieties, your fears, your sins, your habits, your resentments, all that stuff. You have to allow it to. You have to want it to, right? To get you out of those, the things that sully us. But if you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm good. How's it going to help? I'm good, It's not going to do anything. And so just skip down to the bottom, line 14. Chanukah mikodem latzeis. Shemi shemishtokek me'od latzeis mitumato legolel et ha'even me'al pitchei libo bo samida mo'ila lo ha'aras nisan. You have to want it. You don't necessarily have to do it. You just have to want it. If you want it, then you're going to do it, right? If you're able to look at yourself and say, you know what, I could do better. I could be better, right? I could face that truth and see it and move forward. He goes, then you could find the strength to take the stone, and instead of saying the stone over the well, now what he says, I could remove the stone from the entrance to my heart. Because that's really what's happening, right? We have our heart of stone is covering up, that which we can possibly do. And then he says, how could it be that a person could be used to, a Jew could be used to just like be comfortable with living a lie, with sheker? How could that be? When we have a covenant between us and God, right? That we're going to be honest with each other. And God's going to say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, right? And Torah and mitzvos and chesed and all that stuff, right? And be a good person and don't get angry and hold yourself back, right? And love and, and have a kinship with people and love people and not be resentful. It's all part of the covenant. Ubrisi lemashal ben shnei ohavim shebaod shneim yachtav ve'ava boers beineim einan tzricha lebris. So he says that if you think about it, when it's like people, right? You have someone, you're engaged, right? Or you're engaged, right? You're engaged to be married. So you're together, you're hanging out, you're married even, right? And then you're feeling it, you're feeling connected, you're feeling close. Ella le'eit yispardu ish me'achiv. But you go on a long vacation, or you stop seeing each other, you take a break, right? You're going out and you take a break, right? What happens? It cools down. You're not so hot and heavy anymore. Literally, not so hot and heavy anymore. It's I'm not so sure, right? Chas v'shalom that this could or should happen in any of our relationships. Chas v'shalom, right? That's unfortunately how relationships break down, right? Because they kind of, what do they say? What do they say? We grew apart. How do you grow apart? You're right there. You're together. But that's what happens, right? You start living your own lives, and you stop being interested in each other, and you stop engaging with each other the way you should, and then it's mitkarer, right? It gets kalt, it gets colder. Uberavos hayamim, line 24, yichola ha'ava litkarer ksheishkechu ha'ava, and eventually get to a point where you forget, that you love each other. Lezem mo'ila habris. That's what we need the covenant for. Right? The covenant is, okay, all right, things are cold, I'm not feeling connected. Good, all right, we have a covenant to bring us together. And he asked this question, and I leave it really rhetorically, right? Because, really the question, how could that be? We have a Rebbe Shalom, we have a Torah, we have a Masorah, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, sacrificed everything so we could have what we could have, literally, right? And it's happening right now, and it's so fascinating because, again, it's tragically fascinating. But see, the level of connection that these quote unquote secular Jews have. I put it in quotes because it's not real. They're more these secular Jews that are tattooed up the wazoo are more religious than any one of us. They're incredible. What they have is unbelievable, and it was only strengthened. It was only strengthened where? In the darkness, totally in that cold, dark cellar. It was strengthened in those tunnels, and they come out and they're like, Brandon, you see, he's like so and so having his first Friday night dinner. Really? Is that what we'd be looking for? I don't know. Maybe I'd want to go to the Mets game. My first Mets game. There was one guy who came out. He wanted to watch the soccer game. Right? He's a big Haifa something, right? But it's about their first Shabbos. There was I got. I don't know if I told you guys this. So Glenn Cohen, that guy who was here, he sends me WhatsApps. I actually didn't get one today, but he sends me the WhatsApps it's not just me. I think there's a group that he sends to. After almost every prisoner release, after the hostage release, I guess not after I guess he's not part of the debriefing teams Nebuch when they're dead. And one of them, it was either Agam or Liri from the girls. They're about to do the debrief. She meets her family, and it's okay. They have to do the debriefing. It's very important to debrief and to find out things about other hostages, where she was, etc. And the girl says to him, we just hear Havdalah first. What you say? I have a video of the Havdalah they made in the hospital, whatever Shiva Hospital or something. I just want to, before the debriefing, I said, okay, let's do Havdalah, and they did Havdalah in that hospital ward. Why? Because there's a bris krusa that the covenant's there. It's there. It doesn't matter how far away we are or we've been. The covenant's there. So the question goes back, right? Sheva Shmuel saying. So what's the problem? Why are there people, myself included, where we're consistent in committing ourselves to complacency, to living a lie, right? Knowing something's the truth, knowing something is right, and yet, right? And we all do, right? There's a reason why there aren't Kotzker Chassidut today. Because it was too hard. The Kotzker, right? He lived in isolation for the last 19 years of his life. Dave, don't get any ideas. And up in an attic, right? Why? Because he's like, people aren't honest, right? I can't live with this. We're gonna be kulo emes. right? So, but the question is why? How does it work? So look at the next piece. This is straight from the Kotzker. Emes ve'amuna. Emes ve'amuna. And there's a Yiddish phrase here by that arrow, l'chaim, l'chaim. I'll read it in Hebrew. Yecholim lir'os u'lisnanea, vayara am vayanu vayamdu merchok. Sorry, it's the pasuk. The people saw at Har Sinai. They saw what they see: the thunder and the lightning and the fire and the cloud. It was this incredible spectacle. And they heard God's voice. Vayara am vayanu. What does the word vayanu mean? What do we do on Sukkot with the lulav and Esther? What do we call it? What do we call it? The na'anuim, right? They were moved. They were shaken. They were stirred. They were moved. Literally, they were inspired. Vayamdu merachok. And then, instead of, what do you do? If you're inspired, you see something, you're inspired. What do? I'm going to move closer. What'd they do? They went to the back row. Right? They went to the back row. Says the Kotzker, Yecholim liros u'lisnanea. You could see something. You could see the truth. You could be moved. You could be inspired. You're like, yeah, this is emes. This is true. This is it. Yet, with all of that, even so, instead of taking a step forward, we take a step backward. Why? Because it's scary. Because it's scary. Where's it going to lead us? What's it going to do? And then I'm going to have to, if I start doing this, then I have to start doing this. And if I start doing this, I have to start doing this. Then I have to start talking to so-and-so about this. And then I have to answer questions about this, right? All of those things. It's scary. It's scary. Because what is it? So look at the next pasuk. Vayaram vayanu vayamdu merchok. And then that's the people. So the people take a step back. They're afraid of the emes. Scary. They don't want to do it. They're not, I wouldn't say they're like institutionalized, but they're comfortable where they are. And they're afraid of where one step may lead. Right? And what's the next pasuk? Umoshe nigash el ha'arafel asher shamo Elokim. What did Moshe do? Moshe stepped forward into the arafel. What does arafel mean? Into the cloud. The cloud it's an abyss. I don't know where it's going to lead me. Kids have this issue, right? They go to Eretz Yisrael, their seniors nice, going like, oh, I'm afraid. If I go to that school, I can't go to that school. Why? Because that's a flip out school. Then I'm going to flip out. I can't do that. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, right? Just go. You'll figure it out, right? You'll go. Maybe don't go to that school, but no, right? You just go. You'll figure it out because growth is a step-by-step process, right? There was this guy. His name's Rav Shapiro. He saw us we met him at the Ohel. He's a Chabad rabbi in Hoboken, New Jersey. Interesting guy. And he was like, oh, I want to speak to you. I said, looking for someone to maybe say, a little quick var to the kids, the group. And this guy was like, he wanted to do it. He was like very excited. And he got onto each bus. We had 5 buses. He got onto each bus. I could only give him 3 buses because we had to go. But he got onto each bus and he did a little var. And it was beautiful. He said the Rebbe once met with a group of kids, college kids, who were like, regular college kids, didn't grow up observant and not from homes or whatever. And he said, you would think what business do you have to do here, meeting with me? Like, if I were to ask you, who's holier, right? And is some guy, one of my Chassidim, more, really holy, or is it you guys that are holy? And they answered yeah, you're Chassidim, I'm sure, very holy. He goes, no, let me tell you something. He goes, when someone's on a ladder, okay, and you have someone on the top of the ladder, right, and you have someone on the bottom of the ladder, okay, who's going up and who's going down? He said very often the guy on the top of the ladder, he's probably going down the ladder. He might be higher on the ladder, but he's probably going down. For the people on the bottom of the ladder, said the Rebbe, all you have to do is go up. And he goes, as long as you're going up, you're the holiest people in the world. Take on something. One thing. That's all you need. Look, I say you're holier. You're on your way up. You're going up. Right? It's a beautiful idea. And again, where it's going to lead, who knows? But for Moshe, that didn't happen. That's what I'm going to see this last piece. This is from Shlomo Carlebach, on the bottom. And he asks, it says, Moshe Allah el Elohim. And Moshe went up to God. So he says, Madua nivchar Moshe la'alot lahar Sinai. Why was Moshe chosen? He says, Mishum shemikol ha'anashim ba'olam, hayta lo kemea gedola, lezeh yoter mikulam. He said, you know why? Because he had the strongest desire to do it. Atem yodim kama ze amok. You understand how deep this is. Anachnu tamid choshvim shemoshe nivchar biglal shu hayagon. We always think that Moshe was chosen because he was, brilliant. O biglal shu hayaman hi gadol, or he was just a great leader. V'aytalo et ha'ishiyut, the charisma, right? And he had the great personality and a great charisma, and that's why he was chosen. He says no. Avalo, Moshe Rabbeinu nivchar biglal davar echad. Moshe was chosen for one reason. Why? Because he had this desire, this yearning to one day climb Har Sinai and hear God's voice. He had the desire for it. He had a yearning for it, right? Like our friend Boris Standa. Is that unbelievable? The picture of him on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. He told us about his desire. I thought it was a big deal just for him to climb the steps onto the bima. I remember just leaving. I was trying to help him, and he, I'm good. To climb the steps. And he said, by the way, every step hurts. Every time he moves his leg, right? Because it's that stump, and every step hurts. He has a what's it called? He has a aesthetic. And up on, and he had this desire, right? And he did it. That's how he did it. So he says that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbi Nachman Omer Mashu Kol Kach Amok. Rabbi Nachman said something very, very deep. Anachnu Chayim B'Dor Sheyesh Lanu Ma'at Ma'od. He says we live in I don't think Rabbi Nachman said this. I bet you Shlomo said this. But he said we live in a generation that has very little. We have very, very little. Anachnu Osim Ma'at Ma'od. V'anachnu Yodim Ma'at Ma'od. We do very little. We know very little. But you know one thing? He says, Hashem noten lanu izdamnut berega hazeh. Hashem is giving us a chance here. When it comes to holy things, holy endeavors, little things that we can take upon ourselves to better ourselves, to walk up the mountain a little bit more, to step one foot into that abyss, right? And to remember that incredible covenant we have with Hashem. Ulai kvar hitzlachnu dai tov. He goes, maybe we did do. We're on a great path. Baruch Hashem. Look at what we've accomplished. We should feel good about what we've accomplished. We should, right? The Kotzker is like, just keep going. You haven't done enough, right? We should keep going. We should feel good about what we've accomplished. He goes, but maybe we can want it more. Even if we don't do more, maybe we could just want a little bit more for ourselves, for our families, for our community. I every time I go to Minyan, honest truth, every time I go to Minyan during the week, I'm saying this with love. It's not, I'm not mad at anyone. I look around and say, could be better. Like you're coming from Ari grew up in this community. We didn't even have a Minyan, a Shacharis Minyan, until like probably the early '90s, I think.
No, during the '80s,
late '80s.
They would. Basically, they asked everyone to come one day a month or something.
And we'd hope we'd get a minyan. I remember hearing the stories. Now, Baruch Hashem, we have 2 minyanim, right? And we had Mincha Marv we didn't have for a long time. And then during the winter, at a certain point, it was just like, it's too much, we can't do it. Baruch Hashem, like, look at where we are, but look at where we could go. Rabbi Klinger knows. What's my favorite minyan day a year? What is it?
And I'm gonna go with 4:15, like Mincha Marav. No. Favorite? Oh no! Oh, it's Tisha B'av.
When?
Mincha.
Mincha Tisha B'av. Mincha Tisha B'av. He knows why. Because we're in the main shul. And it's packed. And it's Mincha. We're davening Mincha, and we have our tefillin on. And I look and I say, look at what could be. Look at what could be, right? It doesn't. We have our tefillin on usually for Shacharis, right? So look at what could be, right? And that's how we have to have a mindset like that, even if it's not happening right now, even if for whatever all different reasons in the world. Let's have that. We want to be there. We want to be there, right? That's the pshat. אז לפני שהמשיח יבוא עלינו לתקן את הקמע הקדושה הזו, זה מה שנשאר לנו כרגע. מצד אחד הקדוש ברוך הוא מקל עלינו קצת. He says on the one hand, Hashem is makil for us, right? He's lenient on us. מכיוון שאנחנו יודעים כל כך מעט, because we know so little, so Hashem would be nice to us. All right, well, what are we capable of? אבל הידיעה לא אמורה להגביל את הקמע שלנו. But whatever we don't know, right? We only do our best, right? How much do we actually know? I like joking that, I sit in my office, my study over here, and it's wall-to-wall sparm all the way up to the ceiling, and it just shames me every day. It says, read me! I want you to read me more, right? It's there. I need it, I want it, right? So, it's not about the idea. That shouldn't take away from the yearning for more. מצד שני זה קשה מאוד, כי כולם אומרים לנו לוותר, and at the other hand, it's very difficult, because people say, whatever, what's the big deal? It's no big deal, come on, you're modern Orthodox. No. That's not okay for us, that's not okay for our community. Our community isn't just, we don't just come to shul to there's got to be something more. There's got to be an energy. There's got to be a fire. There's got to be a simcha, right? We have to have that, right? And even if we're not there in maaseh, right, we could be there in yearning. Az aleinu liyot chazakim yoter me'ipam, and in that way, we can be a little bit stronger, right, than we were before. And we don't have to be scared where it's going to lead, because we understand it's the MS. And we have a bris krusa. We should never feel constrained or enslaved or subjugated to those walls of complacency that try to imprison us. And ultimately, that I think is the enduring message of the Kotzker Rebbe, right? It's to just always give an honest look to ourselves and say, who am I? Where am I? And how can I be more? And if not, how can I be more? How can I at least yearn for more? And Mirza Hashem, we should all be zocheh to be freed from whatever is constraining us. Physically, all of the hostages should be freed from what's constraining them. Am Yisrael should be freed from this psychological evil of Hamas. We should free ourselves from it psychologically and physically, to completely destroy them, and literally, so that Memshelet Zadon should be completely obliterated from this earth, and Mirza Hashem will all meet together on Har Sinai, or maybe Har Abayit, one of the same. L'chaim, l'chaim.